god of the Kabbalists is reduced to being a Kadi. By saying the right words, he is rushing to assist the mystic. The story of the golem does not end with what was quoted before. By certain meditative techniques and chanting, the Canaanite mystic is said to create a mental image of a human being and use it for astral travel.
The sources indicate that Jews were at least acquainted with methods of inducing disease and death, of arousing and killing passion, of forcing people to do their bidding, of employing demons for divinatory and other purposes. We find accounts of the magician's power to project his soul to far distant places, there to perform an errand, and then return to his comatose body.
The use of divination and magic was strictly forbidden to Israel. Yahweh's condemnation of these black arts is expressed in Leviticus chapter 19 verse 26 and Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 9 to 14. The origin of what is known as the Star of David was a recent addition to the Jewish religion. Gershom Scholem traces its Jewish clone theology back to the middle of the 19th century.
Until the middle of the 19th century, no scholar or Kabbalist got the idea of trying to detect in the star anything like the secret of its Jewish meaning. It does not appear at all in books on the religious life, nor in the entire literature of Hasidism. And this was the case not because such meaning was assumed and not considered problematical, but rather because no one even dreamt of such meaning.
The six-pointed star or hexagram became the insignia of Zionism. The star was mentioned and condemned by the God of Israel in Amos chapter 5 verse 26, and it was called by him the star of your God Moloch, or otherwise called Kiun. Reference to Amos chapter 5 verse 26 and the Israelites having it in the wilderness was also made in Acts chapter 7 verse 43. Here it was called the star of Remphan. All these names refer to the god Saturn. The foregoing verifies that it was therefore in existence long before the time of Solomon. He took this symbol upon himself when he went into idolatry, and it became known as the Seal of Solomon in Arabic magic and witchcraft. The six-pointed star is as old as the Assyrian and Phoenician religion.
Assyrian and later also Phoenician and Hebrew seals often display a six-pointed star with 6 rays beaming forth from its center.
The hexagram is also a Hindu tantric symbol, which represents the sexual connection between the god Shiva and Shakti. The Kabbalists adopted this Indo-Canaanite teaching and remodeled it to mean Yahweh's lustful relationship to the Shekinah. Remember, this is not the Yahweh of the Old Testament. It is the Kabbalist syncretic god of Canaan.
The real history of the hexagram began with Tantric Hinduism, where it represented union of the sexes. The downward pointing triangle was the female primordial image or yoni yantra, existing before the universe. In the course of infinite time, the goddess conceived a spark of life within her triangle, the Bindu, which was eventually born and developed into a male, symbolized by the upward pointing triangle. He united with his mother to form the primal androgyny. The sign of this union was the hexagram. The downward pointing triangle is a female symbol corresponding to the yoni. It is called Shakti. The upward pointing triangle is the male, the lingam, and is called the fire. From the tantric image of the sexual hexagram arose a Jewish system of sex worship connected with the medieval Kabbalah and a rabbinical tradition that a picture is supposed to be placed in the Ark of the Covenant alongside of the tables of the laws, which shows a man and a woman in intimate embrace in the form of a hexagram.
As we continue, you will see the Kabbalah is saturated with occult sexual imagery. The Jewish Encyclopedia admits that the hexagram or the Star of David is equally reverenced in Hinduism. Watch any documentary on Hinduism and oftentimes you would see the hexagram. This symbol is very important in witchcraft and the New Age movement.
In the 1700s, the century which saw the birth of Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati secret society flourished throughout Europe, a new grimoire was published. It has become known as the Grand Grimoire of the Red Dragon. Just as we see in the tapestry of Angers, the Red Dragon is a symbolic representation of the spirit of the devil. First written by Antony, the Jewish rabbi of Venice, the Grand Grimoire of the Red Dragon is a book of black arts, which is a synthesis of previously oral, very secret teachings handed down from one rabbi to the other. The Red Dragon Grimoire is almost exclusively dedicated to instructing rabbis on how to invoke demonic forces. Rabbi Antonio de Veneziana claims the book was originally written by King Solomon, who is also credited with having written the Goetia, which describes how to summon any one or all of 72 demons in the hierarchy of hell. The Grimoire of the Red Dragon gives distinct instructions on how to make a pact with Satan. The text shows rabbis how to summon the spirit of a demonic spirit called Lucifuge Rufacal, who is none other than the Prime Minister of Hell. Many authors believe that the pact with the Prime Minister of Hell was originally devised in texts written or commissioned by King Solomon, and it was, up until the making of this film, one of the closest guarded secrets of the Hebrew Kabbalists. During the 1700s, the Grimoire of the Red Dragon was avidly read by the elite of Europe and the Americas. Many magicians and rabbis were hired in order to make pacts with the devil and Lucifuge Rufacal. The Grimoire of the Red Dragon indicates that if you serve the devil, then the rabbis following the rules of the pact will be rewarded with knowledge of where buried treasure can be found. This treasure is obviously symbolic. The Grimoire of the Red Dragon inspired the stories of Dr. Faustus, who was actually a real historical character. Dr. Faustus was a paedophile magician who used children in black magic sex rituals. Dr. Faustus had patrons amongst the royalty and nobility of Europe. In the year 1509, a German magician, Henry Cornelius Agrippa, wrote 3 books of occult philosophy. He explains the importance of interacting with the spirit of the earth. He explores the techniques of the Kabbalah, sacred geometry, spirit divination, and then describes how to have psychic, telepathic conversations with angels. Through the publication of his 3 books of occult philosophy, Henry Cornelius Agrippa became a favored magician at the royal courts of Europe. In his writings, Agrippa summarizes his duties to the royal elite of Europe when he wrote, "My task is to summon spirits who will defend kingdoms, discover the secret knowledge of men, to increase riches, to foretell future events, and to see and know things done in many miles off."
Imagine the scene, a mysterious temple. Its entrance guarded by massive stone columns and sphinxes. Inside, strange symbols, ancient inscriptions, and mystical numbers lead to a room shaped like a pyramid, with an eye that points toward the heavens. And in the center of the floor, a massive altar. Some of the most powerful men in the country gather here to enact an ancient secret ritual. Drinking wine meant to represent blood from a human skull. And all of it happening just a mile from the U.S. Capitol. It sounds like a work of fiction, that the ritual is real, part of the history of the secretive brotherhood called the Freemasons. Consider this.
America wasn't founded a Christian country, it became a Christian country.
Or this.
The human mind really does have the ability to affect matter.
He can become something like a god. You might be surprised to learn the founders had a similar idea.
There is a painting in the Capitol.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Well, it's a painting that I was shocked to find was there. I said there is a painting called The Apotheosis of Washington. Apotheosis meaning the God-making of Washington.
George Washington becoming a god.
It seemed almost irreverential. It was like, how can a man become a god? But it really, to my eye, and to other historians' eye, catches this concept of the power of man.
Again, can you imagine anyone putting forth that notion of politicians as gods?
Right.
Here we are in the 21st century.
Well,
you'd be run out of town.
You'd be run out of town. There was a statue of George Washington that sat in the Capitol. He was unclothed. It was a model of a statue of Zeus. It was George Washington as a god.
Right.
Kabbalists say 13 represents man's ability to go beyond the zodiac, to ascend above the stars of heaven. With this in mind, consider this phrase inside the Library of Congress. "To lo they build, who build beneath the stars." For Kabbalists, the number 13 is not unlucky, but refers to their concept of God. The word Shekinah represents the manifestation of God's glory. It is taught that the Shekinah glory of God shone in Solomon's temple when it was first dedicated. This picture shows a group of Freemasons reenacting this dedication ceremony. But in the Library of Congress, we are faced with an interesting puzzle, as we find these words painted on the wall: "The true Shekinah is man."
The lost symbol raises provocative questions about the beliefs of the man on the dollar bill, about the power of the human mind, about whether people can become gods, and a little-known science that may tie them all together.